The night was quiet, too quiet. The man sat alone in his small wooden house at the edge of the forest. The only sound he could hear was the ticking of the old clock on the wall. Outside, the cold wind moved through the trees, making them whisper like ghosts. It was an ordinary night, or at least it should have been, but then it came, a sound, soft and strange. It was not the cry of an animal, not the rustle of the trees. It was something else, something weak and broken, almost like a child's whimper. The man froze in his chair, listening carefully. At first, he thought it was his imagination, but the sound came again, clearer this time, carried by the wind. He felt his heartbeat faster. No one lived near him. Forest was empty, and the town was miles away. Who or what could make a sound like that at this hour? The man stood up slowly, his chair creaking under the sudden movement. He reached for the flashlight on the table, his fingers trembling slightly. He was not the type of man who scared easily, but tonight felt different. Something in the air told him this was no normal night. He opened the door, and the cold night air rushed in. His breath turned white in the darkness. He shivered and pulled his jacket tighter around him. The sound came again, this time louder, like a cry. His body told him to stay inside, to close the door and forget, but his mind, his curiosity forced him to step outside. One step, then another, his boots crunching on the frozen ground. The sound seemed to be calling him, pulling him deeper into the shadows. The forest loomed around him, tall black shapes against the moonlight. Every tree looked like it was hiding a secret. The man moved forward, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the mist. The sound grew clearer, softer, almost pleading. It was a sound of fear, of pain. It made his chest tighten, and for a moment he felt something strange, like he was walking into a story he was never meant to be part of. Finally, he reached the clearing near the old shed. The sound was close now, too close. He stopped, holding his breath. The beam of his flashlight shook as his hand trembled, and then he saw it. At first, it looked like a bundle of cloth lying near the broken fence, but then it moved. A small figure curled up, shivering. The man's eyes widened, his throat dry. It was not human, not even close. The figure was small, like a child, but its skin was pale and faintly glowing under the moonlight. Its eyes were large, too large, shining like pools of silver. Thin arms wrapped around its body, trying to hold in warmth that was not there. It was freezing, trembling so hard that its teeth, or whatever they were, chattered. The man's breath caught his whole body, locked in shock. What was this? Was he dreaming? Had he gone mad? The little creature lifted its head slowly. Its glowing eyes met his, and in that instant everything changed. There was no monster in those eyes, no threat, only fear, only sadness, only the silent cry for help. The man felt something stir in his chest, something he had not felt in years. Compassion. But fear still battled inside him. Should he run? Should he call someone? Should he leave it here in the cold? The creature let out another weak sound, like a child begging without words. Its thin body shook violently, and it curled tighter. The man could see frost on its fragile skin. If he left it here, it would not survive the night. His flashlight lowered slowly, his grip loosening. His heart pounded in his ears as he stepped closer. One step, two steps, until he stood only a few feet away. He crouched down, his eyes never leaving the strange figure. It looked back at him, afraid, but too weak to move. He could almost feel the cold radiating from its body. The man swallowed hard, everything in. His life until this moment had been ordinary, simple. But now in this frozen night he was staring at something that could not exist, an alien child, lost and alone, freezing in. Afraid, the man slowly reached out a hand, hesitating in the air. He did not know if it would bite him or vanish like smoke, but deep inside he knew this moment would decide everything. If he walked away now, he could return to his quiet life, but if he touched this fragile being, his world would never be the same again. The sound of the wind howled louder through the trees. The night seemed to wait, holding its breath with him, and the man finally whispered, his voice shaking, "It's okay, you're safe now." The man stood frozen in the clearing, his hand still outstretched. The little creature trembled before him, its silver eyes wide with fear. For a moment, neither of them moved, only the sound of the cold wind filled the silence. The man's breath came in sharp clouds. He had never seen anything like this, not in books, not in stories, not in dreams, and yet here it was, alive, fragile, and staring at him as if he was its last hope. The fear inside him twisted, but another feeling pushed through. Pity. He lowered himself closer, his knees pressing into the frozen ground. The creature flinched, curling tighter as if trying to disappear. The man whispered softly, his voice shaking, "It's okay, I won't hurt you." He reached out again, this time moving slower. His fingers brushed against its skin, and he almost pulled back in shock. It was icy cold, far colder than any human should be. The little body was trembling so badly. It was clear if he left it here, it would not survive. Something inside him decided he could not walk away without another thought. He slipped off his heavy coat and wrapped it gently around the creature. The alien child let out a weak sound, almost like a sigh. It shivering eased just a little, though its glowing eyes never left his face. Man lifted it into his arms, surprised at how light it was. It felt like carrying smoke wrapped in bones. The head rested against his chest, its breath shallow and quick. Every step back to the house felt unreal. He could not believe what he was doing, but he knew one thing: he could not leave her out there to die. Inside, the warmth of the fire flickered against the walls. He placed the creature carefully on the old couch, pulling the blanket over her. For the first time, he could look at her clearly. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, with faint glowing lines running across it like veins of light. Her hair was thin and white, shining faintly in the dim room. She looked fragile, almost breakable, and yet her large silver eyes followed his every move with quiet fear. The man sat on the chair opposite her, running a hand through his hair. "What are you?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. The alien girl blinked slowly, as if trying to understand. Then, with trembling fingers, she pointed at the window. The man turned his head, looking out into the dark forest. The night seemed still, but in the distance he thought he saw a flicker of light. Strange, unnatural light. He felt his stomach twist when he looked back. The girl was drawing on the foggy surface of the coffee table with her finger. She made a circle, then lines around it like stars. Then she tapped the circle and placed her hand over her chest. The man leaned forward, watching carefully. "You come from up there," he said slowly, pointing to the sky. The girl's eyes filled with tears, and she nodded weakly. The man's heart pounded. It was true. then she was not. From here, she was alone, cold and terrified, and somehow she had fallen into his life. But why here? Why him? He wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but she was too weak to answer. Her small hands clutched the blanket as though afraid he might take it away. Her lips moved, whispering sounds he could not understand. The words were broken, musical but alien. The man sighed, sitting back in his chair. I don't know what to do, he muttered. He thought about calling the authorities, the police, the government, but something deep inside told him it would be the worst thing he could ever do. He had seen enough stories to know if they found her, they would not help her. They would study her, cage her, use her, and looking into her frightened eyes, he knew he could never allow that. Suddenly there was a sharp noise. Outside, a buzzing hum, mechanical and cold. The girl's eyes widened in terror. She clutched his arm, pulling herself closer as if begging him to protect her. The man froze, listening. The sound moved slowly through the trees. It was not a car, not a plane. It was something else. Searching, the girl whimpered, hiding her face in his coat. The man felt his blood run cold. He stood and walked to the window, pulling the curtain just a little. In the distance, strange flying shapes moved between the trees. They glowed faintly, scanning the ground with beams of light. They looked like machines, but not human machines. His chest tightened. They were hunting her, and they were close. He turned back to the couch where the girl stared at him with wide eyes. She shook her head violently, as if begging him not to give her up. The man hesitated, torn between fear and instinct. He could pretend he never saw her. He could walk away and leave her fate to the sky. But then he remembered the way she had shivered in the cold, the way she had looked at him with desperate hope, and in that moment he knew he could not betray her. The man grabbed his old backpack and started stuffing it with supplies, blankets, water, food. The girl tilted her head. Confused, he pointed to her, then to the door. Her expression changed from fear to something else, hope. Weakly she stood and stumbled forward, clutching the blanket around her shoulders. The man bent down and lifted her again, holding her close. Her small hand clutched his shirt, refusing to let go. As he stepped into the night, the machines hummed louder in the distance. The man whispered under his breath, "Don't worry, I'll keep you safe." But inside he knew the truth. He had no idea what dangers were waiting. All he knew was that the girl was alone, and now she was his responsibility, and nothing in his life would ever be the same again. The man moved quickly through the forest. The alien girl held tightly in his arms. The cold air bit at his skin, but he ignored it. All he could think about was the strange machines behind them, glowing, humming, searching. Every time he looked back, he thought he saw their lights cutting through the trees. They were not human lights. They were sharper, colder, and they seemed to burn the ground they touched. The girl buried her face into his chest, her thin body shaking. She was afraid, more afraid than he had ever seen any child before. Her small fingers clung to his shirt as though letting go would mean death. The man's heart pounded, but a strain determination rose inside him. He had no idea why she was here or who was chasing her, but he knew one thing: he would not let them take her. After what felt like hours, he reached an old hunting cabin deep in the woods. The place was broken, with half the roof missing and vines crawling over the walls, but it was hidden, and that was enough. He pushed opened the creaking door and stepped. Inside, dust swirled in the air as his flashlight beam moved across the room. He laid the girl on a pile of old blankets, pulling one over her. She looked weak, her glowing eyes half closed, but when he turned to leave, her hand shot out and grabbed his wrist. Man froze, looking down at her. The girl's lips moved, whispering soft words in her strange language he could not understand, but her voice was filled with desperation. Then she sat up, slowly reaching for the small satchel tied to her side. Her trembling hands pulled something out, a small broken device glowing faintly blue. She placed it on the ground and pressed her thin fingers against it. The man leaned forward, his eyes wide as the device flickered to life. A beam of light shot upward, forming a small hologram in the air. At first it looked like random shapes shifting and moving, but then he saw it, stars, planets, a galaxy spinning in silence. The girl pointed at a glowing world in the projection, her silver eyes filling with tears. She tapped it again and again, then pressed her small hand to her chest. The man understood. This was her home, her world. Far beyond the sky, the image changed, twisting into something darker. Flames, explosion, tall shadows moving across burning cities. The man felt his stomach tighten. It was war, destruction, something terrible. And then he saw her family, figures like her, standing together, holding hands, but the image broke apart violently, leaving only darkness. The girl lowered her head, silent tears slipping down her glowing skin. She was the only one left. The man sat back speechless. He had never believed in aliens, never believed in worlds beyond Earth, but now one was sitting in front of him, showing him her pain. His chest stocked as he looked at her, so small, so lost. He whispered softly, "You're not just lost. You're hunted." As if to answer him, a sudden sharp buzz filled the cabin. The girl gasped, clutching the device tightly. The man whipped around, his flashlight beam landing on the cracked window. Outside, faint red lights drifted through the trees, moving slowly. Searching, his breath caught. They had followed them. The girl shook her head violently, pointing at the lights with wide eyes. She pressed her fingers to her lips, begging him to stay quiet. Man nodded, pulling her close. They sat in silence, listening as the machines moved past, their strange hum echoing through the night. The beams of red light swept across the forest floor, pausing every few seconds as if sniffing for a trail. The man's hands clenched into fists. If they came inside, there was nothing he could do. But for reasons he did not understand, the machines kept moving, disappearing deeper into the woods. The silence returned, heavy and suffocating. The man let out a shaky breath, his body still tense. He looked down at the girl who had buried herself against him, her body trembling. He could feel her heart beat fast. Desperate, afraid, he wrapped the blanket tighter around her and whispered, "You're safe for now." Hours passed, but he could not sleep. Every sound outside made him flinch. Every shadow felt like a threat. The girl rested against him, her breath uneven but steady. He studied her glowing skin, her fragile frame. She was different, yes, but in that moment she was just a child who had lost everything. And he was the only one who could protect her. But the question clawed at his mind, why here? Why him of all the people in the world? Why did the strange girl fall into his life? Was it chance? Or was it something else? The device flickered again, and for a moment he saw new shapes in the projection. Symbols, patterns, messages he could not understand. He felt a chill crawl up his spine. It was as if she was trying to tell him more, something important. Something about the hunters, about why they would never stop. The man sat in silence, his eyes fixed on the dying fire. His life had changed in a single night. He was no longer alone in the forest. He was hiding, an alien child, carrying secrets too big for Earth, and somewhere in the darkness, machine search for her, relentless, merciless, waiting for the moment they would find. Sorry. The girl shifted against him, whispering a word in her language. He did not know what it meant, but he knew. The tone pleading, fragile. She trusted him, a stranger, a human, and in that trust he felt something awaken inside him, a sense of duty, of courage, of defiance. He whispered back, his voice low but steady, "They won't take you, I promise." And in the silence of the night, with shadows watching from the trees, the man realized the truth. The secret was no longer just hers, it was his too, and it would lead them into dangers far beyond the forest. The night did not rest. The man sat in the broken cabin, his body stiff, his ears sharp. Every crack of a branch outside, every whisper of the wind made his heart jump. Beside him, the alien girl slept lightly, her small frame wrapped in the blanket, her glowing skin faint under the dying fire. She looked peaceful for a moment, but he knew peace could not last, because the hunters were still out there, machines that never slept, never tired, never gave up. They were searching, and sooner or later they would find her. The man's mind raced. He had no plan, no map, no idea where to go. But staying here meant death. Before dawn, he packed quickly. He stuffed food, water, and the girl's strain device into his backpack. The girl stirred when he touched her shoulder, her silver eyes blinking open. She looked at him with confusion, as if asking silently why they had to move. He pressed a finger to his lips, whispering, "Oh, we can't stay here." She nodded weakly, though fear flickered in her gaze. They slipped into the forest as the first gray light touched the sky. The trees loomed around them like silent guards. The ground was frozen hard beneath their boots, crunching too loud in the quiet morning. The man carried the girl in his arms. When she grew too tired, every so often, she glanced back, her wide eyes scanning the woods as if she could sense something chasing them, and she was right. Not long after, the man heard it. The distant hum, low at first, then rising. He stopped, holding his breath. Through the branches, faint red lights glowed in the fog, moving closer. The girl clutched his arm tightly, whispering a sharp sound in her language. It was a warning. The hunters were near. The man's chest tightened. He had no weapon, no defense against such things, but he had one choice: run. He pulled the girl onto his back and took off through the trees. His boots slammed against the ground, his breath fast. Branches whipped against his face. Forest blurring past behind them. Hum grew louder, the lights cutting through the darkness. The girl buried her face against his shoulder, holding on for dear life. The man's legs burned. His lungs screamed, but still he ran, weaving through the trees, sliding over roots, stumbling but never stopping. Every time he looked back, the hunters were closer, strange flying machines, shaped like metal insects, their wings glowing with cold energy. They scanned the ground with red beams, hunting like predators. The man darted into a dry riverbed, crouching behind a fallen log. He pressed a hand over the girl's head. Forcing her down, the machines hummed. Above, their beams sweeping the riverbed, the man held his breath, his body trembling. One wrong move, one sound, and they would be found. The girl pressed her small hand against his chest, her glowing eyes locked on his. Filled with fear and trust, she whispered something again, soft and broken, though he could not understand the words. He understood the meaning. "Don't let them take me," the man nodded, his jaw tight. "Not while I'm alive," he whispered back. The machines hovered for long, painful seconds, then with a sharp buzz they drifted away, deeper into the forest. The man exhaled shakily, his body slumping against the log. The girl clung to him, her breath quick and uneven. He stroked her thin hair gently. "We can't hide forever," he muttered. "They'll keep coming." Hours later, the sun broke through the trees, weak and pale. The man led them out of the woods. Following a dirt road, the girl walked beside him now, holding his hand tightly. Her blanket dragged in the dirt, but she refused to let go of him. She glanced up at him often, her eyes filled with a strange mix of fear and hope. The man wondered how much he truly understood, but he knew this: she trusted him completely. That trust was a heavy weight. He was just a man, ordinary, unremarkable, yet somehow he had become the shield between her and the galaxy. He did not know how long he could hold that role, but he knew he would die before breaking it. By midday, they reached an abandoned railway tunnel. The man decided it would make a safe place to rest, at least for a while. Inside, the darkness swallowed them. Their footsteps echoed as they moved deeper. The girl's faint glow lit the walls, strange symbols carved into the stone by vandals long ago. For a moment the silence felt almost safe, but the girl suddenly stopped. Her glowing eyes widened and she pulled on his hand, pointing deeper into the tunnel. The man frowned. "What is it?" he whispered. Girl stepped forward slowly, her thin fingers brushing against the cold wall. She pressed her palm flat and the strange device in her satchel flickered to life again. This time the hologram was different. It showed not her home, not fire, not war, but Earth. The blue and green planet spun slowly in the air. The girl's eyes filled with sorrow as she pointed at it. Then she pointed behind them toward the machines that hunted. The man felt his chest tighten. They weren't just after her, they were watching Earth too. Before he could speak, the sharp buzz echoed again, this time closer inside the tunnel. The girl gasped, clutching his arm. Red light flickered at the far end of the darkness, moving toward them. The man's pulse roared in his ears. The hunters had found them again. He grabbed the girl's hand and pulled her into the shadows. The tunnel shook with the hum of the machines. He knew they could not keep running forever, but for now he had only one thought: survived the chase no matter the cost. The tunnel was dark, silent. After the machines passed, the man and the alien girl sat together on the cold stone floor, their breaths unsteady, his heart still pounded from the chase, his body heavy with exhaustion. But when he looked at her, so small, so fragile, he knew he could not give up. The girl leaned against him, her silver eyes half closed. Her glowing skin gave off a faint warmth now, no longer icy as before. For a moment he let himself breathe. He stroked her thin hair, gently whispering, "You're safe for now." The girl tilted her head, watching his lips. She did not understand his words, but she understood the tone. Her trembling eased, her small body relaxing against him. Time passed slowly in the tunnel. The man shared some food from his backpack, breaking bread into small pieces. The girl studied it curiously. Before tasting it, her lips curled. Slightly, almost a smile. The man laughed softly, the sound strange in the dark tunnel. It was the first time he had seen her look less afraid. A tiny smile gave him strength he didn't know he had. After she ate, she pulled out her broken device again. It flickered weakly, projecting glowing shapes into the air. The man leaned forward, curious. This time the image was clearer, not fire, not war, but people. Her people. He saw tall, graceful figures with silver eyes like hers. They were gathered in what looked like a city of light, towers rising like crystal. The girl touched the figures, then pressed her hand to her chest. Her family, her home. Her voice trembled as she spoke words he did not understand, but he could hear the ache in them, the ache of loss, of memory, of something she could never return to. The man felt his chest tighten. He placed a hand on her shoulder. She looked at him with wide eyes, and for the first time she did not look only afraid. She looked hopeful, as if maybe she was not as alone as she thought. They sat together for hours. The man tried to teach her small words, pointing at objects and saying them slowly. Water, he said. Lifting a bottle, the girl repeated it softly, her accent strange but clear. He smiled, nodding. Fire, he said, pointing to the dim flame in his lantern. She repeated again, her silver eyes shining. Each word was a small bridge between them, and with each bridge, the distance between two worlds grew smaller. That night the man dreamed of stars, of standing on a world that was not Earth, holding the hand of the small alien girl. When he woke, she was already awake, watching him quietly. Her hand rested on his arm as if making sure he had not left her. The bond between them was no longer fragile. It was real, but danger never left. When they stepped out of the tunnel at dawn, the forest was eerily silent. The girl gripped his hand tightly, her gaze scanning the sky, and then they both saw it, a dark shape far above, gliding slowly. Not a plane, not a bird, a hunter. It circled like a predator that had found its prey. The man pulled her back into the shadows, his heart racing. They were being tracked, always tracked. No matter how far they ran, the hunters were never far behind. Later, when the sun was high, they found an abandoned barn at the edge of the forest. Inside, the air smelled of dust and hay, but it was dry and hidden. The man decided to stop here for a while. The girl walked slowly among the broken beams, her hand trailing along the wood. Suddenly she knelt on the floor and placed her strange device down again. The projection flickered, this time showing something new. Not her family, not her home, but him. The man's breath caught as he saw a glowing figure, his own outline standing next to her. The image showed them both side by side. The girl looked up at him, her silver eyes wet with tears. She whispered a word softly, pressing her hand over her heart. It was the first human word she had learned fully. Safe, she said, her voice breaking but clear. The man's throat tightened. In that moment he realized the truth. She did not see him as just a stranger or even just a protector. She saw him as family. The last thing she had lost, the bond between them, was no longer just survival. It was love, fragile and powerful, the kind that defied fear. But before he could speak, a sharp noise shattered the silence. The barn shook as Beams of red light cut through the cracks. The girl gasped, clutching his arm. The man's blood ran cold. The hunters had found them again. He grabbed the girl, pulling her into the shadows. The old barn groaned under the weight of the machines outside. The hum of their engines rattled the wooden beams. The man clenched his jaw, holding the girl close. Her small hand clutched his shirt, whispering safe again and again. But even as she said it, he knew safety was running out. The hunters would not stop, and sooner or later, the bond they had built would be tested in fire. The barn groaned as the hunters circled. Outside, red beams of light cut through the cracks in the wooden walls, sweeping across the dusty floor. The man held the alien girl close, his heart hammering. The machines had found them, and there was no escape. The girl's silver eyes filled with terror, her glowing skin trembling as she pressed against him. She whispered the words she had learned, her small voice shaking, "Safe, safe." But the man knew the truth. Safety no longer existed, not here, not now. If he did nothing, they would both be captured. If he ran, they would be hunted down. There was only one choice left. He would stand and fight. He looked around the barn, searching for anything he could use. Rusty tools hung on the walls. Broken planks lay scattered on the ground. Nothing that could match alien machine. Still, his hands clenched around a heavy iron bar. It was weak against their weapons, but it was something, and in his heart burned something stronger than steel. Determination. The barn door shook as one of the hunters smashed against them. The old wood cracked, splinters raining down. The girl cried out softly, clutching his arm. The man crouched beside her, cupping her face with one hand. Her silver eyes looked at him, wide and desperate. He forced a small smile, though fear knotted at his chest. "I'll protect you," he whispered. She shook her head, tears running down her glowing cheeks. But before she could speak, the barn doors exploded open. Blinding red light poured inside. 3 hunters hovered at the entrance, their sharp wings buzzing like blades, their glowing eyes locked on the girl. Instantly, the man stood tall in front of her, gripping the iron bar. He felt like a fool, a tiny man standing against the impossible, but his voice did not shake as he shouted, "You'll have to get through me first." The machines advanced, their beams slicing across the floor. The man swung the bar wildly, striking one of them with all his strength. Sparks flew as metal clashed, the machine jerking backward. Pain shot through his arms, but he didn't stop. Another machine lunged, its claw reaching for the girl. The man threw himself in front, the bar smashing against its limb. The force sent him crashing into the wall, his chest exploding with pain, but he pushed himself up, blood dripping from his lip. The girl screamed, her voice sharp and alien. The broken device in her satchel lit up, glowing brighter than ever before. The machines paused, their beams flickering. The man seized the chance, slamming the bar into the nearest one. It sparked violently, crashing into the ground with a hiss, but 2 still remained, circling their red eyes burning. The man staggered back, his body weak. He knew he could not last long, but he stood firm, his legs refusing to give in. The girl crawled to him, pressing the glowing device into his hand. Her voice broke as she whispered, "Help, safe." The man looked down at the device. It pulsed in his hand, alive, waiting. He didn't understand how to use it, but something inside told him what to do. He pressed The button at its center, a blinding wave of blue energy burst outward. The machines screeched their red lights, flickering as the wave slammed into them. They spun wildly, crashing into the barn walls, splintering wood and stone. The barn shook violently, the roof beginning to collapse. The man grabbed the girl, pulling her close as debris rained down. They stumbled out into the open air, coughing, gasping. Behind them, the barn burned with strange fire, the hunters sparking in the wreckage, but it was not over. In the sky above, more red lights appeared, dozens of hunters circling like vultures. The girl looked up, her eyes wide with terror. The man held her tighter, whispering, "We're not done yet." He lifted the device again. Its glow stronger now. It pulsed in rhythm with the girl's heartbeat. She placed her small hands over his, guiding him. Together they pressed the device. Another wave shot upward, brighter, stronger. This one was not just an attack, it was a signal. The hunters froze in the air, their red lights flickering uncertainly. They hovered, watching, waiting. The man's knees gave out and he collapsed to the ground. Girl clutching him, his vision blurred, blood trickling from his temple, but he still smiled. He had fought them. He had not given up, and now something was coming. The girl whispered in her language, tears falling. She pressed her forehead against his, her small voice breaking. "Safe family." The man closed his eyes, holding her close. He did not know if rescue was near or if the hunters would return, but he knew this. He had stood against the impossible, and he would do it again as long as she needed him. The night sky lit with strange light, the signal spreading across the stars. The hunters retreat, slowly vanishing into the shadows of the clouds. The man's body fell limp, but his arms never let go of her, and the alien girl, no longer just a stranger, held on as if he was her world. The man lay on the cold ground, his breath shallow, his body weak. Smoke from the ruined barn rose into the night sky, glowing faintly under the stars. The alien girl knelt beside him, her glowing hands trembling as she tried to shake him awake. Her silver eyes overflowed with tears, her voice breaking as she whispered again and again, "Safe, safe." He opened his eyes slowly, pain flashing across his face. But when he saw her alive, still holding him, a faint smile touched his lips. He whispered weakly, "I'm not going anywhere." The girl let out a sob, clutching his shirt tightly in her small heart. She knew he had given everything to protect her, and now she would not let him go. Above them the sky shifted. The signal they had sent pulsed, brighter, spreading across the stars. Like ripples in water, the hunters had vanished, retreating into the shadows. But something else was coming. The man and the girl both turned their eyes upward, and there, breaking through the clouds, came a light unlike any other. It was not red, not the cold glow of the hunters. It was blue, soft and powerful. The light grew brighter, forming a shape in the heavens, a ship, vast and graceful, descending slowly. The girl gasped, her silver eyes wide. She whispered words in her own language, filled with wonder and hope. The man did not understand, but he knew this was no enemy. This was rescue. The ship hovered silently, its great shadow covering the forest. A beam of gentle light fell from its center, bathing them in warmth. The girl stood slowly, pulling the man with all her strength. He staggered to his feet, his body heavy with pain. But he did not let go of her hand. Together they stepped into the light. It wrapped Around them, lifting them gently from the broken earth, the man felt weightless, the pain fading for just a moment, and for the first time since that strange sound in the night, he felt peace. Inside the ship, the air was warm and filled with soft humming sounds. Tall figures appeared, their silver eyes glowing like the girls. They looked at her with shock and relief, voices rising. In their strange language, the girl cried out, running into their arms. They embraced her tightly, speaking words the man could not understand, but he knew what they meant. Family, she had found them again, her people, her kin, her home. The man stood silently watching the reunion, his chest ached both from wounds and from something deeper. He had saved her, protected her, kept her alive, and now she belonged where she had always been, among the stars. One of the tall figures turned to him, bowing their heads slightly, though no words were shared. The meaning was clear. Gratitude, respect, honor. He had done what even they could not. The girl broke free from their arms and ran back to him. She threw her thin arms around his neck, whispering one word again. Family. The man's throat tightened as he hugged her back. He had not expected this, not the bond, not the love, but somewhere between the fear and the fight. She had become his daughter, not by blood but by choice, by trust, by something greater. The tall beings spoke again, their voices low and melodic. One of them handed him a small crystal, glowing faintly. The girl pressed it into his palm with her small hand. Her silver eyes stared into his as she said softly, safe promise. He realized then that this was not the end. This was a beginning. The crystal pulsed in his hand as if carrying a piece of her world with him, a bond that distance could never break. The ship rose higher, the forest below fading into shadows. The man looked out through the glowing walls, his earth shrinking beneath them. He had never imagined leaving his world. He was just a man, ordinary, forgotten by most, but now he had touched the stars. He had carried an alien child in his arms. He had stood against hunters with nothing but courage, and he had won. The girl stayed close to him, her small hand never leaving his. The fear in her eyes was gone, replaced with light. She no longer looked abandoned, no longer freezing, no longer afraid. She was safe because he had chosen to stand by her, and he was not alone anymore. For in her eyes he saw not just trust, not just gratitude, but family. The ship vanished into the endless night, carrying them toward a future neither of them could imagine. The man did not know what waited ahead, more hunters, more dangers, perhaps even greater battles. But he no longer feared the dark, because in his arms was proof of something greater than fear, hope. And as the stars spread wide before them, endless and alive, the man whispered softly to himself, his voice steady at last, humans may be small, but we will never stop fighting for what matters. The girl leaned against him, whispering her final word of the night, safe. And together they drifted into the unknown, carried by hope beyond fear.